What's up guys, it's Aegis here. So today we're going to be looking at an infinitely charging build. Yesterday we discussed how Dooley, the one hero that doesn't have any innate infinitely charging items, can possibly compete this meta with some of the heroes that do. Today we're going to be looking at one of the heroes that does, and in a big way. I think Pig has some of the most infinitely charging items in the game. He has Matchbox, Marbles, Yo-Yo, Bushel, and there's probably a couple others that I'm not mentioning that he can get access to, like Probe. So Pig is really strong right now, especially in the infinite charging department. However, one area that I have seen some Pigs struggle is trying to figure out how to scale the infinitely charging builds, and that's what we're going to discuss today. The infinitely charging builds are really strong, but as I've discussed in the past two Dooley videos, they need a way to scale their damage, their shield, their healing, whatever it may be, in order to really be effective. For Vanessa, you have like an infinitely charging item such as Turtle Shell that just does it for you, that scales your shielding items. However, Pig doesn't really, if you look at all of his infinitely charging items, he doesn't really have one innately. He does have weights, which does scale damage and healing based off of its cooldown. And I'm pretty sure with Bushel you can get that infinitely charging as well, if you want to do something like the Yo-Yo. But other than that, there's not too many options that Pig has in terms of scaling with his infinitely charged build, with his infinite charge builds. So sometimes you have to get a little creative, and in this game I think we showcase that decently well. We find a really creative item that helps us scale the Matchbox in order to win a lot of fights. So to get into the build, for now we just start with Matchbox Marbles, and unfortunately Silk at bronze. Silk at bronze is like almost never worth it. I think in this we do get the Silk upgrade pretty early. However, with all the infinitely charging items, you can only really have one item that scales in this build, because there's not too much space for any other items, and you're more or less better off having like a fort in that space, or a shield scraper, something else that can charge based off of you infinitely charging your other items. So Silk isn't really the best in that regard, but we keep it for a little bit here because this is what we get early. Sometimes you just gotta work with what you got. So from there, I'm just kind of looking for the other items. I had never, at this point, I had never really tried to go with an infinitely charging build. I think I said it yesterday, I don't really find these builds to be too intuitive or fun. I think they're pretty easy to pull off, and they don't really reward the player for good decision making. It's more or less just, let's pick up the items that are really good in the meta right now and see how we do. If we can upgrade most of them to diamond, we'll absolutely crush, and if we can't, we lose against other actual well-made builds. So it doesn't feel too good playing against this stuff right now. It does feel like it's the lizard of the patch, or the kind of the ballista of the patch, where like players that don't fully understand how to play this game or fully understand how to build themselves will be relying on a lot of the infinitely charging items in order to get a lot of wins. But I wanted to try it out. That's why this video is going up. I had never done, this is like my 5th or 6th day into the patch, and I had never done an infinitely charging build, so I was like, might as well try it out instead of consistently shit talk it all the time, try and figure out what makes it good, what makes it bad, and by trying the build out, even if you don't like it, it allows you to be more prepared to play against it, right? Because you understand it more. So again, we're just going to shops looking for more infinitely charging items. Whatever we can get our hands on, we're happy. I think I'm a little upset because if you really want to infinitely charge the Bushel well, kind of want to start with the bushel, or at least get it within like the first day. The reason being is that you get an event. I think it's the mushroom event. When you get the mushroom event, it actually upgrades the bushel. So there's certain items in the game that enable events to have extra options. The bushel is one of them for the mushroom event, and it allows you to upgrade the bushel. So a lot of pigs are using that right now to get, you know, diamond bushels by day 2 or 3. And it's pretty big. The mushroom event definitely decreases in rarity after day, I think it's 2 or 3. I forget. It's one of the two. So it's kind of harder to do it if you find bushel after that, let's say at silver or maybe gold tier. But you can still invest one of your upgrades from leveling up possibly into the bushel and be fine with that. But we don't have bushel yet. We're just discussing it. Right now we're just kind of working off of two. One I feel like is really strong. Matchbox is okay, but the strongest item that I think Pig does have access to is marbles. Marbles is really a terror, especially if marbles didn't only slow small items. That the good workaround for marbles in this meta is the fact that it only slows small items. But if it slowed any type of item, marbles would definitely be absolutely disgusting. The only, as you saw yesterday with the dually build, the only time that, you know, you really beat marbles is if you just don't have any small items or maybe one. In that dually build, the only small item that we had was Aiden, so the marbles consistently proccing didn't really affect us. Now if you get slowing marbles, that's when it becomes pretty disgusting. I think it loses the small item requirement for some of its slows. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it just doubles its slow duration, which means that it can still only slow small items. So it may not be best to get slow. But you'll see, I actually decided not to get slowing marbles here because I think I theorized that. But we do get a slow enchantment, and the slow enchantment does go absolutely huge. A side note, if I'm clearing my throat a lot, it's because I've been kind of sick lately. So it may be a little annoying, but I'm trying to keep my voice cleared, no cracks. I might be drinking water here and there. So I'm sorry if you guys hear that in the background. But yeah. So we get the weights. I was thinking about using them, but also I didn't want to, mostly because I didn't want to commit to, I wanted to kind of go full non-weapons to not commit to yo-yo. So if we're not committing to yo-yo or probe or anything like that, then there's no real reason for weights. They scale our healing items, but we're not going to have too much healing. We're mostly going to be shield burn tech. That's kind of where I wanted to be at with this build. And I felt like I could pull it off. And it goes decently well.
Waiting for you.
So getting the knee brace from Curio is big. The biggest reason why in these infinitely charged builds, you know, cooldown plays a huge part is that the other counters to it, and I'm trying to get a video on it out to the infinitely charged builds, is the 3 cooldown increasing items, Bonk, Chrono Barrier, and Fort. So with those 3 items, it's really nice to have your infinitely charging items technically on a lesser loop than they add cooldown to. So if you get, you know, if your matchbox is on 2 seconds and it charges itself for 4, and then you get hit with a diamond fort or a diamond chrono barrier that increases your item's cooldowns by 2 seconds, well, your matchbox is still fully charging. That's the idea there. Is that you don't want to overdo it, but as long as you have a little bit of counter for that stuff, it becomes pretty good. And this shows how disgusting this can truly be. I mean, with the marbles proccing so much, she can barely get any of her other items on her 18 shield coat, and that's not going to be enough. This is kind of a bad build though, regardless, but it shows you how crazy marbles can kind of get when you have a lot of small items. It does go insane. So we lose a couple early fights. I mean, I think that pig's kind of like that right now. If you don't get like bushel, or you don't get a decent level on some of your charging items early. But the good thing about this build is like it has a really good mid game and a really good late game if you combine some scaling. So any of the infinitely charged builds you can easily win late game as long as you scale a little bit, and you may lose a little bit early, but you win mid game as well. Mid game's probably where you're the strongest, because you don't really need damage scaling. At that point, mid game, you do enough damage as long as your charges are on a decent timer to actually just kind of win it. So here I'm thinking about the snow globe. Snow globe this meta is really good. I glitch out. Yeah, sometimes when you sell your items you glitch out, so I have to re-resume. But Snow Globe this meta is really good, especially if you can get something like we get later, tall buildings, which haste your adjacent items to a property for 1 second, 2 seconds, respectively. If you can get a Snow Globe out and you can possibly increase its freeze timer, it's one of the nastiest freeze items in the game right now. Probably one of the best that I've had to go up into. Especially when you can get its cooldown lower and you can be hasting it. It's going off quite a bit. It can perma freeze out certain builds. It's perma frozen out some of my builds and been really frustrating to deal with. So yeah, we decided to pick it up here because, I'm tired of being frustrated with it. It's time to be the person that proliferates it. A lot of this build was that, by the way. I was tired of consistently running into these guys. I did have as much as I try and post winning builds to the YouTube, it's not like I don't have my fair share of rough times as well. That's kind of not the way that I want to present myself. I definitely have a rough time in this game a lot. I was having a rough time against some of these infinitely charging builds. Definitely, I think we all have. If you didn't want to go infinitely charging and you're kind of trying to figure out how to combat it, right now is a little tough for you. It's not that you can't win games. It's more the fact that consistently combating these infinitely charged builds when they have such an easier time finding their items, or at least getting one or a couple items to the tier that they needed to, even if they don't have all their items that they want. It's kind of tough because you're the one who's doing the free hand. There's no build for you out there. There's no one way to counter these guys. There's no one board that this looks like, and that's what I think that's rewarding. We do get the bushel here, which is huge. That's where I think it's super duper rewarding, because it's the fact that you have to figure it out yourself, and that's what this game is truly about. It's not about following builds online or trying to figure it out that way. It's truly about you trying to figure it out yourself. And with that, I'm gonna need a drink of water because my voice. If you can figure out a way to infinitely charge some of this stuff, it's really good. And outside of that, if you're trying to figure out a way to combat it and figure out a way to scale your items really fast, as we saw yesterday, it's really good. But it seems like the scaling versus infinite charge stuff is kind of like the perfect sword versus the perfect shield this meta, with the shield being a little bit more perfect as far as the charge stuff. It is harder to do it the other way around and figure out how to scale your items fast enough in order to consistently combat these, which is honestly the better way to play, in my opinion. Even though it's harder, it's still the better way to play. I was thinking about taking the hive here instead of the bushel, but I really wanted to try and see if the bushel went crazy, and we get an upgrade to the snow globe, which is pretty nice. Another second of freeze is never bad.
Your aura guided me to what you need.
But yeah, it's just mostly figuring out how we're gonna get these loops together fully. Ever since we upgraded the matchbox, it's been looping decently well, but we eventually want to get as many diamond items on the board as possible in terms of your charging items, because of course at diamond they charge the most, and gaining a second of charge every time that you upgrade them. We get the bushel late. or most likely, see, it's day 4. This is what I'm talking about with the mushroom event. I'm most likely not gonna get it again. So that means my bushel's gonna stay at this level for a decent period in time, unfortunately. And I think we eventually would just pivot off of bushel, because as good as bushel is, if you can't get it up to diamond, it's not really worth in a late game build. That's my 2 cents on it. Some other players may feel differently. It is very, very strong right now, so it's like if you can proc it a decent amount with some of your other items, maybe you have a ship, you know, and you have a gold bushel. At that point, then it's like, okay, you know, I can see it. But bushel's kind of tough if you don't get it to max. The one item that we definitely I still have to play with that I didn't go for is the new bottled ship. I haven't even read that item. I know that that's another infinitely charging item though too, and it works really well with bushel. I just haven't been able to read it exactly. I think it's when you use an adjacent item, charge this, you know, 2 seconds or a second or whatever, and it just loops with bushel infinitely. But we're gonna have to figure that out. I still have to play a little bit more games in this meta to fully see all the items and fully feel them out. As of lately, I've been playing a lot of Thunderstorm from WoW, so I've been being the best Bazaar player, but that's just what happens when you're an all-around gamer and just not. I really don't just play one game. I play a lot of games, but this is the game that I feel like is easier for me to post to the YouTube right now. As far as like, it allows me to do commentary, it allows me to talk about my plays. Doing that in something like Thunderstorm is going to be a lot harder. I think I might just have to do live commentary for that, aka just like a normal YouTube video, which we'll figure out later. But for stuff like this, it's pretty easy for me to do commentary and talk about how I was feeling at the time. So we get the yo-yo, and I just skip over it because A, it's bronze tier, which means that it's going to take the longest to level. We already have marbles that we have to level 2. We already have matchbox that we have to level 1. We already have bushel that we have to level 2. So it's just, it's a far shot where you're never going to get enough level ups or find the item enough in order to upgrade all your stuff to diamond. So it's like you kind of need to pick and choose what you want. The most that I've seen is like 3 or 4 items at diamond on one of these boards, but they normally don't have them all there. As long as most or a fair amount of your critical ones are there, so like the most critical one to us right now would be matchbox. As long as they're there somewhat, you'll be all right. As far as like gold tier, with a couple diamond tier items possibly, or maybe one silver tier item with a lot of gold, with maybe like 3 diamond tier and a silver tier, or and a gold tier item, something like that. But your mix will not always be 100%. Okay, all my charge items are at diamond tier. It is kind of hard to do that right now. The biggest reason that makes that hard is all the level up options are fixed, and you just can't get level up, you know, your leftmost like 5 times in a row like you were able to, you know what I mean, or level up bronze to silver, because they're fixed level up rewards. You'll always get them at certain times. You always have to prioritize what you use that on. So here I use it on the marbles to upgrade it to gold, and my main priority is actually not the bushel, it's the marbles and the matchbox, because I do think that marbles and matchbox are probably 2 of the stronger instant charge items for pig right now. So yeah, just trying to figure that out with the matchbox. We're just trying to get as much charge on the other items as we can. As I feel like as long as we get matchbox and marbles to diamond, this game could be interesting, could possibly be even a win. And that's kind of the problem with it, right? I'll get the belt from Flex, which is nice for level up options or whatever else we need. But that's kind of like the problem with the build. Is like you get to these charging items, you know, by day 6 or by day 7 up to diamond, and you always feel like you have an out. You know what I mean? You always feel like that you're going to be strong enough to beat some of the later builds because you can, as long as you go up into a build with decent slow items, I mean decent small items, you have insane slow identity. So even if your build's not fully there as terms of like everything's super optimized, if your marbles are upgraded, you'll slow other items, and as long as you tickle them, you know what I mean, you'll do enough damage. And that's what kind of feels bad about this type of stuff right now. Kind of feels a little noobish about this stuff, is the fact that you just kind of have to like go into an enemy that you counter with small, like that has an entire item type that they just can't run because you have this one item that charges itself so fast it slows all their items and they can never get it off. That doesn't really feel skillful right now, and I do think it's a problem with the metagame. But I don't know, I also don't know how to rework marbles. Marbles have always been kind of strong. They've never been weak. That's the thing with marbles. They never, Piggy Matchbox, I understand a little bit more, because at least Piggy Matchbox gets its time in the sun. It was a very weak item before. It was barely not played in any other meta other than this one. So it's like, okay, I can understand the Piggy Matchbox, but marbles have always been strong, and it just feels like they always get stronger. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they do to marbles, if they do anything to nerf it. I feel like they're gonna have to take some of these items out, though. I think we are playing with a lot of the items that coming up this week. This is why I kind of want to get this video out. It's because I'm pretty sure a new patch is coming, possibly later this week, possibly later next week, removing some of these items that are real problem children. I think that, you know, 2 of the ones that they're really looking at are at gold tier on our board right now with the matchbox and the marbles. So yeah, I don't think that Ice Globe needs to be removed. Bushel might just need the event removed instead of having the bushel itself removed. It is a medium item that charges itself fully. It's still kind of broken, especially if you can get a shielded bushel. It's really broken because then it just fully loops itself. So we'll see what they do. We'll see what they do. That's all, you know, Raynad and Tempostorm's decision. But yeah, some of these items are ridiculous. They're ridiculously good. A lot better than some of the items that you play with on Dually, definitely. So I felt really strong playing Pig, I will say that. This is after, you know, all those Dually games that I played. I just decided to boot up the Pig. I would say that out of the 3 heroes, I probably play Vanessa and Dually the most. Ever since Pig got those nerfs early days, I haven't really played him that much. But whenever I play him, I do enjoy it. And here is where we can talk about what I was talking about before. So what you really want with these infinitely charging builds is you want to scale. And I've been saying this for the past 3 days. Figure out any way that you can scale some of your infinitely charging items and you're golden. And here we have one. The Lumbors, if you don't know what Lumbors do, they add, I think at default, they add like 3 damage at bronze to your weapons times 2. And then it goes up by like 5 each time. However, we got a Fury Lumbors that adds 1 burn to our burn items every time it goes off. So that means it's adding 2 burn to our burn items right now. That actually is really decent for a consistently proccing item such as Piggy Matchbox. Also, we don't have burn scaling, which is the main way that we deal damage, the only way that we deal damage in this build. Also really needed. So we sell off one of our charging items that we could possibly, you know, upgrade, get shielded, whatever. It could be absolutely broken. We make that sacrifice and we buy the Lumbors. Because we need, I think that personally, and I've always said this, and I'll continue to say this, and the Lumbors do go off a lot in the fight. If you can figure out a way to scale these builds, that is when you are truly scary. It's more worth to figure out a way to scale these builds than to have so many charge triggers. The reason being is that
I should warn you.
you're eventually going to run into builds that just innately scale,
You should know,
like we had
I'm a
yesterday.
digital legend on the
Even if they're trying to avoid, you know, doing these types of items, they will scale. And you can see here, you know, the piggy matchbox is already up to 8. The lumbors are going off. They do help quite a bit over the course of the game. I think it scales like, on one fight, it scales the piggy matchbox up to like 13 or 14, and that's absolutely insane. With as much as the piggy matchbox procs, it's good to give it any little bit of burn that you can, because it's basically infinitely charging itself. So it's not there yet because it's not at diamond, but eventually we do get it there, and when it does, it's absolutely disgusting with the lumbers. And then we get tall buildings here, which is probably the best skill in the game, not gonna lie, for pig. It introduced haste to a hero outside of Zara. You literally just can't get haste from, and Zara normally tells you tall buildings, and that's the way that you get haste. So it's like pig really needs any source of haste that he can find. He's the least hasted hero in the game as far as like natural abilities to haste, natural haste findings. It's really rough. So that's really needed, getting tall buildings. And eventually we get the upgrade to it too, which is disgusting. We use tall buildings to haste the lumbors, and I think eventually we use it to haste the piggy matchbox, which I don't think we needed, because eventually the piggy matchbox just charges itself. So maybe my positioning, I'll say it now because I'm thinking about like where we position stuff in the future. I think eventually my positioning is a little bit off, in terms of like the lumbor should probably be next to, like here, for example, the lumbor should definitely be next to the snow globe, because the snow globe's a property. And I think I mouse over and I realize that. Ha! I always forget that because it's so small that I always forget that the snow globe itself is a property. But it gets, yeah, it has like ×1 because of itself. So I'm like, okay, I immediately need to change the lumbors over there. I think next time is the deal. But eventually I do move it around again. And I think the move around after the move around, yeah, so I move the lumbors there. But I immediately realized that. But then I move it around again after this, and it's like the move around after the move around isn't right. I feel like I put the piggy matchbox next to the snow globe, if I remember correctly, and you'll see it's not like, it doesn't really help the piggy matchbox go off anymore. The piggy matchbox basically goes off as much as going off, and it'd be better to have it on the one item that scales our burn, right? But yeah, it's really important. It's nice by day 6, by day 7 I was able to introduce scaling into the build. I think that it's really important to have it in any type of way. Like I said, Vanessas normally have it naturally with the turtle shell. And you can see how disgusting, if you've ever been against Vanessas, you can see how disgusting the turtle shell actually is. When you get that to diamond and it starts scaling your other shielding items, and you know you have anything else on the board that does damage based off of your shield, whether it be a claw, whether it be force field, which truly is a Vanessa item now, it can absolutely go ham. So we get the cult, which, you know, doesn't really do anything for us. Yeah, I immediately hop off of that because I'm like, no, that's our scaling. I can't re-enchant that. If I could enchant the matchbox with deadly crit, it'd be awesome. But they only enchant weapons, so unfortunately we can't use it. We just get a ritual dagger and move on. Now I can officially say we're feeling kind of strong. We have our charge items that are, you know, on 3 seconds each, which isn't bad. We have a snow globe that's getting hasted. We have the lumbors that are getting hasted. The jewelry box should be on the other side. If you wanted to have really optimal placement, the jewelry box should be on the other side. This is why I said my placing does get off a little bit, and this is why we do reviews, because I can see how my board is interacting. My placement's off here, and the fact that it should be should be the, yeah, actually not the jewelry box. I should have ATM next to the bird. Should have ATM next to the bird. Then it should be snow globe, OARS, and jewelry box at the end. That's how that should go. So my positioning is pretty off there. It's actually pretty bad right now. And I just realized this now. And this is why you do VOD review. Holy hell, this is why you do VOD review. Because, yeah, this is really bad. As far as my backline positioning, I already have theorized in my head how I can make this way better. Making sure that the bird, I should have definitely been focused on, I don't know why I didn't think about tall buildings with the bird. But obviously that's not what I'm thinking about right now, and it's kind of annoying. But yeah, with tall buildings, I should definitely be hasting the bird with the ATM at the very least, even if I want to use the snow globe on hasting the lumbors. So that's a big mistake right now in terms of board positioning. Huge mistake. Big L. However, big W, from there we do get the slowing matchbox. So now it doesn't matter if you have small items or not. We're non-discriminatory here. We slow everybody, which is great. But yeah, the positioning now, since I see it, is definitely really bugging me, because it could be way more optimal. There's probably been a lot of other board states that I've been in that I've posted to the channel that, you know, I could have theorized this, or I have theorized this in the background. I haven't really said anything. But it's good to talk about it. Yeah, the positioning's really bad right now. It is not good. We're not making the most of tall buildings. We're not making the most of our haste, which is never what you want to do. It feels okay because, you know, our peaking matchbox is at least scaling, and then we're getting 2 seconds of haste on the lumbors, but it could be better. It could be better. We could be proccing, you know, the marbles and the matchbox a little bit more based off of the cooldown of the bird and the ATM being next to it, hasting it, right? That's the biggest problem right now. I don't even really think I thought about, now that I can tell you I don't think I thought about during the game, or I would have just done it because it's a quick shuffle of items. That's all that it takes. Oh yeah, again, trying to get the cooldown possibly to 3 seconds so that, you know, if I run into bonk or chrono barrier, it's still infinitely charging, especially at diamond. But we're not there yet. We're still not an infinitely charging build, quote unquote. We don't have any item to diamond, so they're not charging themselves their full cooldowns. They still have, you know, I think the matchbox is the least that has 0.5 seconds to go after it charges itself, and it still is disgusting. But when you get these builds to true infinite form, that's when it's like, what the hell is happening? Because they're consistently proccing a million things on their face, and that's just that.
Reuse everything.
Done the knee brace, so we're gonna put in the knee brace. I think we put it in for jewelry, just to decrease cooldowns better. I am decent with remembering the knee brace tech. I'm way better at remembering the knee brace tech than I am at remembering to put Walter in. So there's that at the very least. So yeah. Knee brace is really good. I guess I'll explain it real quick because it increases the cooldown of your items. And we get the upgrade to knee brace there, which is awesome. It increases the cooldown of your items, so when you get items like the feathers that reduce the cooldown of certain items, it reduces it on a higher cooldown. So, you know, let's say, I think the lumbors are an 8-second item. They become 10 seconds when I put in that knee brace because it's add 2 seconds to my cooldown, and then I reduce that by, you know, whatever percentage that the feather gives me. So I'm reducing a 10 instead of an 8-second cooldown by 6 or 8% or whatever the feather gives me. I'm reducing a 10-second item now by 6 or 8% or whatever the feather gives me. Then we get prime real estate. And that's where it would have been really nice to realize that this positioning is off and we should probably, you know, change it around. I think I do. Eventually, I think that's the idea. Like, I feel like the positioning's off, and that's the idea of giving the matchbox haste. But I even think that that's wrong. It should have been the bird, if anything, because the bird is the one thing that does not charge. So I was thinking about what to do here. I was thinking about if I'd ever have, because the other option is decent if you don't have more than 4 items, but I was like, I don't think that there'll be any point in the game where I won't have 4 items. Then we do this positioning, which is a little bit, this is what I'm talking about with the matchbox being next to the globe. I'm theorizing in my head, is this better? I don't think so, because the matchbox is basically, you know, it's charging itself. It has a 0.5 second cooldown, so it's not really going to use all the haste that it gets. I do think that this is a little bit better though than where we were at before, only because at least we have 2 items that are utilizing tall buildings. You know what I mean? We just weren't utilizing the ATM for tall buildings before. At least it's hasting.
My dreams are too big for you to steal.
Go ahead.
It does seem like eventually it does run out of the haste though, the matchbox. I was kind of looking at it here. It kind of goes ham every time it's hasted. I don't know, maybe this was the right positioning. It does utilize the haste as far as it's not continually hasted. It's not proccing so much that it's continually hasted. But I do think I changed off of this because I don't really love this either. It's a little weird, this build and the way the decisions that I make. You gotta remember, it's my first time playing with an infinitely charging build, so I'm like, is haste good on an infinitely charging item? Is it not? Is it only situationally good into like chrono barrier for, you know, bonk that we're seeing a lot? What you know, what exactly is the best option here? And that's what I'm really thinking about. But yeah, it's my first time playing, so I'm gonna make a lot of mistakes. My positioning is not gonna be great. We may not get the best charging items that you've ever seen, but that's kind of the thing with this build, is you don't need all the best things to win. As long as you have a little bit of scaling and, you know, you charge your items relatively quickly, you know, this happens. You know, what happens on board. And of course, like, things like slow enchantments are disgusting. You know, if we had the Probusian, it'd be absolutely nasty with the other two. Like, if we had, instead of the bird, we had Probusian next to the marbles, it would be such a problem. I don't think I ever found probe. If not, if I did, I found it early. But probe is a really good pig item. It's a neutral item, but it's really good on pig because of the way that marbles work. It's really good on every hero because you have like cool LEDs for dually that you could technically use it with, and a couple slow items there. And Vanessa has like, you know, tripwire now starts at whatever, starts at bronze, and you have rope and clam, a couple things that you can use it with there. So I think that what's it called is pretty good right now. Proboscis. I wanted to say that right. That's why I said what's it called. Proboscis. There's no kissing. Proboscis is pretty good right now. So I was thinking about that bushel. I do grab it just in case. I think the biggest thing that I'm thinking about here is I'm not going to put it in, but shielding is a very easily found enchant in the Bazaar. And if I can find a shield enchant, the bushel would go absolutely insane. I do put it in for a little bit because I feel like possibly the ATM is enough to charge it, but I don't think I like it. I just keep those items there because I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it here, and I think after the next fight, I don't really love the way that looks. Truffles are also an interesting item that was added to Pig. In future builds where Pig utilizes more of his value gain options in items, Truffles will definitely see a lot more play. It's just this isn't like that meta. Like, we're not getting a lot of, you know, Pig's Gym pigs or Pawn Shop pigs or a bunch of stuff like that. Even though I don't know, with the infinitely looping stuff, it may be kind of hard to get some of that stuff off. But if they don't have like enchanted items with, you know, freeze or slow, it might be good. I'm not sure the viability of Pawn Shop Pig in this meta. I don't know how good or bad it is. We get upgrading option. I'm pretty sure it's just the matchbox here, yeah. To make sure that this is infinitely charging. And now I'm like not really sure. I think I placed it back over there, but I'm also like not fully sure if that's the play. So we also get the incendiary rounds, which fits really, really well into our charge ability. Even though at diamond, you know, there's 6 seconds, you only need to use both adjacent items. So I end up putting in the incendiary rounds, I think, over the bushel, and then trying to figure it out from there. I think I put in the incendiary rounds and the bird over the bushel. And it seems like a decent play, just to add a little bit of extra burn. And also incendiary rounds will scale with our ores, and they do proc a decent amount in the midst of the fight. So yeah, it might have been bird next to marbles and incendiary rounds by themselves next to bird. I'm not sure exactly. However, to make incendiary rounds work, it has to proc a decent amount. And putting it next to marbles definitely makes sure that it'll proc a decent amount. Bird would just charge it 9 seconds at the end of the day, and it wouldn't be, I don't know if it would be worth enough to just keep the rounds at that point.
Are you sure? Have you noticed? I'm here.
But yeah, from here we're just going ham. I mean, big slow identity, not really much that this guy can do. He gets one item off and he has no shield in order to do anything with it. And the slowing matchbox is absolutely insane. The fact that you can get a slow enchant on that, and these builds get really silly. That's where these builds get really silly. When you can scale them really well, and when you can get certain enchants that do stuff like this. Like the slowing enchant on the piggy matchbox is why this is a video in the first place. I gotta be honest with you. Being able to get like impactful enchants on these full charging items, there's nothing that your opponent can do if you're slowing their entire board by minute 0, by second 0. You know what I mean? You literally just enter the game full slowing their board. It's very, very annoying. And definitely something that I don't, you know, I may be showcasing it here, but I don't praise it. I don't think that it's a good way to play the game, as far as like I said, I wanted to try this build out, but this is not normally the way that I play. I don't think it's healthy for the game to have items that, you know, basically defeat the opponent the second that they go off, because they're just so damn strong. You know what I mean? Like, this guy has no chance after that. And you see this build, and you feel like these are the types of builds that I feel like the Bazaar needs to not produce, because the only thing that this build tells you is, oh yeah, if I got an enchantment to enchant my entire board with Radiant, maybe I could compete with these guys. Which is like the most insane virtue signaling to send to a player ever, because you just can't do that. You can't enchant your entire board with Radiant. So you're always gonna have items that get slowed, and you're always gonna feel like it's worse. Your build is just worse than these infinitely charging builds, or these guys know how to play more than you. A lot of these infinitely, if anyone's utilizing infinitely charged consistently in the modern meta, it's because A, they really want 10 wins, and B, they don't know how to play the game. So never think that just because you're losing to a build that the player is better than you, especially if it's one of these cookie cutter builds that you can easily just go online and find from day one, right? But yeah, it does seem like there needs to be a change to these infinitely charging items in some way. The way that they proc, what they do, the enchantments that you can get on them, it's just a little much. And like I said, you introduce an enchantment, you introduce scaling, and it's absolutely insane. There's literally nothing that almost anyone can. If you introduce scaling and enchantments at a good clip. So like, let's say you have frozen marbles or a frozen matchbox and slowing marbles, or like, you know, if you introduce any type of mix of that, there's like very little that anyone can do. Even someone like this who feels like they're decently, you know, a decent amount along, just gets absolutely slowed to hell with his Ladle on 1 second. You know what I mean? And it's just like, yeah, we absolutely, like, he's so close to winning with just weapon damage. We don't slow him at all with our marbles, but even with that not happening, you know, we still burn through him. Technically, that build should be a counter to me. It's all medium items. We don't slow anything with marbles. All that marbles does is proc. Yep, I'd mouse over it because it's literally slowing nothing. All marbles does is proc the matchbox, but I look over because I don't remember seeing the matchbox slow anything, and it does. I just realized that the Radiant Regal Blade is there. I didn't realize, I didn't see it slung the Regal Blade. I was like, I wonder why. It's Radiant. That is the biggest way to counter a lot of this stuff, though. So I can't hate on that. Because that's like the only way to counter a lot of these infinitely charging builds is to get like Radiant on a really, really critical item. So as much as like people like Crip, some of the higher level people don't like Radiant or think that Radiant's kind of like, I think that Radiant's the least culprit of the problem here. Radiant, a lot of people are getting Radiant in response to the fact that they have to go up against these super cheesy infinitely charging builds, which is like, fair enough. If you're going to go a single weapon build, you're going to kind of have to give it Radiant, or you're going to be slowed to hell with a build like this. You know what I mean? So I see it. I personally see it. I'm not sure exactly what they'd want to have happen to Radiant. Maybe make it a rarer enchant if you fix some of these charge builds. But however, if these charge builds are kind of seen as a necessary evil right now, as far as they're in the game and they are evil, then I think that being able to get Radiant at a decent clip is actually good for people who legitimately want to play the game. Radiant's like one of the only ways that you can play, like, you know, builds that aren't instantly charge. Because you go into these guys that do stuff like this and you get absolutely destroyed if you don't have Radiant on your items. So it's like, it's a here or there. If you don't have, you know, if you have Radiant on a good enough item, right, the fight can be somewhat competitive and it can be interesting. But if you don't have, you know, Radiant on anything, the fight's going to be over in 2 seconds because I'm slowing all your items out the ass, which is really annoying in the meta. I don't think that that's a good thing, personally. But yeah, from there we're just kind of scaling the V matchbox. The matchbox is on ham right now. And I am really, really confident in our build. I think one of the next things that I wanted to aim to upgrade, but I don't think I have the chance to, is the Lumbors, so that we can scale, you know, possibly 2 more burn in the fight every time that they go off if I can get them to diamond. But I don't think it's really something that comes around. So yeah, I think the slowing enchant is really what puts me on top, truly. It's outside of that, like, the reason why I guess I'm just gonna rant about that more because it's the way that we win the game. The biggest reason why I don't like the slow enchantment is it kind of stops your brain from working too. Like, what do I do to this board to make it better? You know what I mean? I look at this and it's like, it's insane. Like, we're already at an insane clip. Why would I not just try and get skills or do anything else? And that's never where you want to be at in the Bazaar. I think you always want to be looking on, like, oh, how can I make this better? How can I, you know? But it just feels like once you get like a fair amount of infinitely charging items, you're done. And you never want to be done in the Bazaar. Like, you always want to, up until your last, I think that's the game that they want to create. Up until your last turn, really be looking for items that can help you out and do a lot for you. We upgrade the marbles here, finally get that up to diamond, so now we have 2 infinitely charge items, and we are in the loop. I would dare to say we are officially in the loop. We didn't go for anything else that's infinitely charging, I'm pretty sure. Of course, you know, ammo's not infinitely charging because it needs 2 items. This actually, this build scared me. I don't know exactly what's happening here, why the katana's hitting so fast in the beginning.
But I've seen my share of
But there's been a lot of people doing this type of stuff, and this is another build that I have to try. I don't understand how this happens. I think I replayed this fight a couple times because I'm not sure exactly how this happens. I immediately go for a replay. I guess we can try and spot it out here. I don't know why this katana hits so many times.
You should put it toward nobler use.
Why does it hit? Is it like a bug? Because it doesn't show it going off. Unless, oh, it's alacrity. It's alacrity. It's the only weapon that he has. I see. So every time he crits, he charges an item too. So people are trying to full combo people with alacrity now. Interesting. I just realized that on the watch back. I did not know that. Okay, so it's alacrity that's doing that. Yeah, I can see it up in the top left. Alright. Interesting. I saw a build online like that, and it basically looks like the knife build. When you get it to work with a high enough damage weapon, it's very interesting. It's crazy how resistant the identity of these goddamn single weapon Vanessas are, dude. People really fucking love single weapon Vanessa. For you guys to be trying to make that work in this meta and how insane it is with the goddamn charge items, that's crazy. I still see single weapon Vanessas. It's like every meta. People really love that playstyle for whatever reason. It's the craziest thing in the world. But more power to you, I guess. If that's how you love to play, ever since, you know, your knives were out, then all right, you know, more power to you, man. I'm definitely like a guy who likes to experiment and go here and there. I stopped playing single weapon like 2 patches ago because it kind of got boring. I really enjoyed when flagship was a good single weapon to have and you could kind of do the stuff with that. That was really fun. Flagship's one of my favorite items for Vanessa.
A very different school.
But now that time's kind of gone by. It's, you know, cutlass, katana, whatever you can figure out. And that's kind of a little boring. Right now, at least for me. But that Vanessa was going ham with the single weapon build. I could see definitely how they got decently far with that. That's scary. Going up against something like that. Oh yeah, like I said, there's not much else to talk about, truly, as far as in terms of the build. Like, you get things to full charge, right? You know, and you just kind of cruise on it, and that's kind of the problem. Like I said before, I'll restate it. It's kind of the problem. You don't really want to be chilling. At this point in time, I would like something else to say in the video, as far as like, you know, oh, we go for this item, or this could be an interesting pivot, or, you know, there's not really anything else. Not really anything. This is it. You know, this is it. You have your scaling with the lumbors, you have your infinitely charging items with the marbles and the matchbox, and you have decent freeze identity with the snow globe. However, this wouldn't be, I wouldn't have made this YouTube channel if I didn't dare at times to risk it. So this is really safe right now, right? Really safe. However, of course I want to try something else. And we get the ice cream truck. And we just got Slugger. So the thing that Slugger reads, and I was like, I mouse over this for a while and think about it. Just read this and, you know, Slugger reads that whenever I use a small item, charge a weapon 1 second. And ice cream truck itself reads, when you use another non-weapon item, charge this 1 second. So, I mean, Slugger's 1 second too. So basically, every time I use the matchbox and the marbles, I'm charging the ice cream truck 2 seconds. At this point, I'm like, yeah, I'm down to do something new because we haven't really pivoted off of anything in a while. This will definitely be worse because we're going to remove a × 2 snow globe that, you know, double hastes our ATM and our matchbox. However, I'm definitely down to risk it. We got the skills for it. It could be interesting. So we grab it. Sell off the bird. We move all that in. And we grab the ice cream truck. It would have been boring if we played it too safe. IMO. So I didn't know how this was going to work. I remember I was really kind of nervous about this. I was like, did I throw the entire game with my pivot? That's what I'm thinking in my head here. But no, not at all. It was a decent pivot. You'll see the ice cream truck actually goes kind of ham this fight. So we have another infinite scaler, right? We have another infinite scaler. It's the seashell infinite scaler. It is Vanessa. So yeah, Vanessa is also another hero that can go infinite and try and infinitely loop these combos with charge. So it's 2 infinite scalar builds versus each other. And yeah, with that ice cream truck going ham, with everything else going off, 1,150 burn, we absolutely chew through it. And with that being done, that's about it, man. Juggler was huge for the ice cream truck. I was really proud of myself at the end for knowing to pivot to juggler and make that useful. It was really an interesting. It's a really good skill that I normally, at times, if I don't have a large item, when I get it, because Sludge Titan or Trash Titan, whatever it's called, is kind of a later encounter. I normally don't make use of it, but I'm glad that I pivoted and tried to make use of it here. I think it just makes you a stronger player trying to utilize every little thing that you can, even if you don't normally utilize it. But yeah, that's basically it. You get your instant charging items down, you get your scaling down, you get some type of freeze or slow identity down, and you just go absolutely ham with these builds. These builds go beyond the moon right now. They're definitely, in my opinion, a little bit too cracked. A lot of these items definitely need to be looked at, maybe taken out for now while you look at them. It's been rough. It's been rough. Some of these items have always been strong, like marbles, like yo-yo, Piggy Matchbox, first time in the sun, like we said before. So, you know, it depends. It depends on the way that you view it. But my personal view is that a lot of these items possibly should be removed. It is a little much. However, with that said, 12-day victory in the bag. Thank you guys all for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe. You guys are awesome, and I will see you again tomorrow. Peace.